Morning, welcome back to Agenda. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. Thanking you for joining us this morning and for being subscribers of Cignal TV. And for those of you who follow us via Facebook and YouTube, thank you very much for making the effort daily. We really appreciate it. Today is October 7, 2022. It's a Friday, and today we are going to have a learning module, learning module with our invited guests, because we always invite people historically, the media invites individuals to be resource persons on a certain topic because of their background, because of the organization they represent. But more often than not, we discuss the issues, but never give honor or enough time to focus the light on the organization and the background. So that's what we're going to do today. And it will be a continuation of an interview that was too short last week. But before all of that, let's go to our daily starter. And it is from the Bible. It is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 46, verse 4. For those of you who are already pagod, sagad, said, okay, those of you who are tired from the long week. And it goes, I am he who will sustain you. Okay, that's from the book of Isaiah, chapter 46, verse 4. I am he who will sustain you. So I will share, I will confess that I was kind of feeling that this morning, and I guess it comes with age. Okay, so when you're a bit run down, seek the Lord, seek His Word, and also get some rest. Okay, now let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star. Quick review. September 7, 2022, Marcos wish no more hungry Pinoys. Wish ko lang, as they say. And that is the wish expressed by President Bongbong Marcos, I believe, when he spoke at the opening of the AgriLink, the country's biggest agriculturally focused trade show. And he pointed out that his vision is for the Philippines to become an agricultural trade hub. Okay? And that's not a bad wish. Although, ladies and gentlemen, if I were wishing that today and doing it tomorrow, I have to tell you it will take at least 10 years or not 20 years. And that is based on the experience of Thailand. Okay, at the top of the front page, inflation, most urgent public concern. In a recent survey of Pulse Asia, respondents said that their most urgent concern are the rising prices of commodities or of goods. And that concern was made clear because it is the only category where the new administration rated negatively. Overall, there is a positive reception of the Bongbong Marcos administration, but when the issue of inflation was raised among respondents of 1,600 Filipinos, bagsak po ang administration dun sa inflation. So BBBM will have to work harder regarding lowering the prices of basic commodities. To the left of the header, Maceda named COMELEC commissioner, our fellow columnist, okay, and friend Ernesto Ferdinand Maceda Jr. Was appointed as a new commissioner of the COMELEC. Medyo very accomplished po yung si Edward Maceda because he has taught law. He has he has worked in Congress for as a congressional staff, etc. And of course, let's not forget that he is the son of the late great Manong Ernie Maceda. So congratulations, Edward, our fellow columnist in the Philippine Star. To the right of the header or the top of the Philippine Star, this is a really tragic event. If you are looking for proof that that Satan roams the earth, or that there are devils on earth, then all you have to do is read the story of this gunman, a former police, a dismissed policeman in Thailand. He was dismissed for drug use. He went on a rampage yesterday and killed 38 people. The news yesterday was 35, but by last night, it involved 38 people using a gun and a knife. But what is really wicked and evil about it was that this demon, if I may call him, or this demon-possessed man, went to a nursery school or a primary school and killed children as young as 2 years old. And he killed over 20 of them, not to mention the adults that he also killed. So that is probably going to be the darkest day in the history of Thailand. And let us pray that it does not happen here in the Philippines. So if there is any evidence or argument that we should really put the death penalty for drugs, then read the story of what happened in Thailand yesterday. Okay. Further down, Cabinet reviewing blended learning. Okay, the PBBM Cabinet is now reviewing the good points and the bad points of the blended learning, the challenges of implementing the program, and we will most likely hear more about that in the coming days. Meanwhile, Justice Secretary Boying Remulla is in, I believe he's in Geneva addressing the United Nations Human Rights Council, and he had a very interesting statement in his speech. What we ask of you, the Human Rights Council and partners, is to listen to us, to understand the context of our challenges, beside us on the ground, not above us from afar, to trust that we know best what is good for our people, and to work with us to realize the vision of human rights and justice for all. So clearly, Secretary Crispin Boying Remulla, our DOJ Secretary, is getting his message across, and we will see exactly if, based on the speech, the PBBM government will be able to deliver. And moving along further in the news, we have DOH. Okay, this is also very important, ladies and gentlemen. DOH fears super spreader undas. It's only October 7, but in a wink of an eye, we will suddenly be all preparing for November 1 or Undas or All Souls Day, All Saints Day, etc. And that is what the DOH is afraid of, because if there is one area where you are most likely to get infected with COVID, all things being as they are, it will be in the cemeteries, because we will all be channeled into small corridors, crowded places, and there will be a concentration of people. So the DOH, because ladies and gentlemen, kumakalat po ang COVID. May mga kaibigan tayong tinatamaan ng COVID. And these are people who are socially distancing. They wear masks. They go through, meron pong motoring event recently. Pagpunta raw ng isang journalist, in-antigen siya, and he was immediately sent home. A friend of mine reported for work in their company after the weekend, antigen, immediately sent home. No symptoms, but positive. So, going back to the news, the DOH fears super spreader undas. So, more likely than not, we will probably be forced to implement the same rationing or population control of people going to the cemeteries. And I don't know, PBBM might be forced to simply say all cemeteries close on November 1. Okay, now jobless rate rises slightly in August. Okay, hindi naman daw po ganun kataas pero tumaas nonetheless. Last but not the least, we have the photo of the mega mall. Okay, tawag ko dito SM eh. Pero, and people say, tanda mo na talaga. But, photo of the SM Mega Mall all lit up in preparation for the Christmas shopping that is soon to happen kung hindi maubos lahat ng pera, bayad, utang, etc. So, that's about all the news we have for today for you. But however, please let me remind you, there are more news in material inside pages of the Philippine Star. At hindi lang po balita, may comics, may sports, may culture, etc. So please, if you can't go out to buy the paper, get it online because the Philippine Star will give you all the information you need. Medyo marami hong mga hindi ko na mabanggit dito kasi hindi ginagawang headline. May isang anak nagte-training ng motorsiklo, etc. But chismis na yan. Hindi naman chismis. Actually, it happened. Anyway, let's now go to our interview portion. And like I said before or at the beginning of the program, invite ng mga tao. We ask them to become resource persons because they're experts, etc., or because they belong to an organization or a company that specializes in an area of concern relative to issues, topics. In fact, our guest this morning asked me at the start of the day, are we going to be talking about the 100 days? The first 100 days, and said, no. We're going to talk about your life and your accomplishments in your organization, because if we talk about the first 100 days, it will only last 5 minutes. So let's not go into that. Let's talk about substantial issues that people would be interested in. And I think you should really listen because pati ako na-impress ako dito sa mamang to. Okay, roll the Betamax, Gab.
Sonny Africa is Executive Director of IBON Foundation, an independent NGO focused on providing socio-economic research and analysis on various issues in the country. He is also a board member of the independent media outfit Alter Media. Africa obtained his bachelor's degree in philosophy and economics and master's degree in development studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science.
Okay, good morning, Sonny. Welcome to the program.
Ay, umaga, Sir Cito. Na-stress naman ako sa Betamax nyo.
Anyway,
Thank you for that.
We should always manage to inject humor into conversations. Kasi if we take ourselves too seriously, walang mangyayari. And kung puro naman issue, I mean, like, you know, the first 100 days, everybody is gearing up to tackle, analyze to death the first 100 days of PBBM. But I mean, realistically, this is a, off the cuff conversation. I mean, realistically, what can you expect in 100 days? I think I've lived long enough, and my father has lived long enough, God rest his soul, to know that nothing gets done in the first 100 days.
Directions matter though. I think the 100 days is important, at least because it is the first 100 days. That's the time to set directions. Kumbaga, on the 101st day, if you haven't set a direction for the economy or the country, it means you didn't actually think hard about what direction you want for it. So I do agree though, given that parameter na how much can you do? Not much, but you can actually set a long-term view for.
Yeah, but I guess I'm saying that because my mindset is all of those directions, even cabinet members, programs, etc., should have been laid out. If it was not, it should have been laid out during the campaign, diba?
Oh, actually, exactly po. But even then, I think, of course, once you're the president, it does matter because exactly po, by the choice of the economic team, at least if not what you've done in terms of actual concrete accomplishments, what you mean to do, those first steps are critical. And then the journey of 1,000 miles. It also matters which direction your step is taking. If you're going backwards with that step, I think the 100 days can actually give you an indication if you're heading in the right direction or not. Pero nga, kung ayaw nyo naman padalibin doon, okay naman kami.
No. It's okay. Because I get your point about directions. Kasi, is it really about directions or destination? I was listening to a pastor, Andy Stanley, and he always pointed out that, there's so many directional signs on the highway.
Yeah.
But if you don't even know where you're going, that I think that's the issue. And I have to restrain myself. But every time I read something about PBBM, the media always seems to focus more on the I wish thing. And to be fair with PBBM, I'm sure he said so many more things that I wish that there will be no more hungry Filipinos, or I wish that Filipinos don't have to travel abroad for work. But ikaw ba may nadinig ka ng destination?
Pero kasi Sir Cito, di ba? I mean, sa totoo lang, historical view, no? Every government actually has a good destination. Kasi no government naman is going to say, we want the economy to collapse. We want poverty. We want the economy to remain backward. So actually, ever since the start of the very first Philippine development plans, noong late 1940s, the Quadrino Plan, post-US colonial period pa to, from the very start, they were all saying the right things. Reduce poverty, strengthen agriculture, strengthen industry, increase jobs, and literally every development plan since the 1940s, since the Philippine independence, until I think what the Philippine Development Plan they will release in December will say, they would all, I think, have a good destination. But the problem was never the destination, because no one will say we want to go backwards. The problem is what steps you're taking towards that destination. And that's actually our main issue, not just with, stepping back on the first 100 days. There's a main issue with the economic managers. I mean, competence is relative. I mean, you can be competent as a murderer. You can also be competent as an economic manager. So it depends on parameters. And if the parameter is, are they competent in the sense that they'll be managing the economy as it's been managed the last 40, 50 years? Definitely they are. But the thing is, the conventional economic wisdom that's been drilled into people's minds from those past 40, 50 years of economics that actually has failed to develop the economy, that's where the problem lies. So kumbaga, we're getting too dogmatic about our economic measures. And I think right now, case in point lang, they're talking about the national budget. It's so weird that it's taken as an article of faith that it's a good thing na magtipid. It's taken as an article of faith, and the economic managers brag about this. They're talking about we're going to balance the budget, fiscal consolidation. But the thing is that what the economy needs? If the economy is stumbling, if people are suffering, and if the main weapon the government has to intervene is the budget, why tie your hands from the very beginning with this abstract notion of balanced budget, fiscal consolidation? And as a sign of how drilled that is into people's heads, it's actually felt as if it's a good thing. It's a good thing na magtipid tayo. But it doesn't make sense kasi if the economy now is floundering, if our agriculture industry are weak, if people are suffering, if more and more people are actually losing their savings, losing their incomes, the government should step in with its most powerful weapon to intervene, the budget. But the policy decision, because of this dogma that, let's embrace balanced budgets, let's reduce the deficit, because of that dogma, the government's actually prevented from helping people to the point that they're even justifying it.
Yes,
Sonny, ayuda is a waste of money. Medyo, it's kind of insensitive. Hindi, beyond F1, it's actually a very insensitive statement to say...
No, but wait a minute, Sonny. Can you explain that a little more or give us a concrete example? Because I have to confess, I'm one of those who say, alam nyo, gastos kayo ng gastos para sa wala. Eh di magtipid na lang tayo and use the meager resources we have to what is essential needs of the Filipino people or of the government. But you're saying na dogma yan, old school yan, pang matanda yan. How would you go about it?
Sorry po.
No. I mean, I agree. We belong to the last 50, 60 years eh. Pero what would you suggest? You went to the London School of Economics. You have all the right credentials. What's your example of a solution?
Sige. Siguro one point lang before a reframing. I think the big problem why we're so inured against thinking differently about the budget is because our government now and past governments have not been held accountable, di ba? They've used the budget, misspent it for their own political survival to benefit, politically well-connected cronies, the private sector and financial supporters. So parang, I just want to start off with that. That is a problem. But the question there is, if that is the way our political system works, if our governments are that bad, is the solution to shrink the budget? We'd argue hindi. The solution is actually make the government better, improve governance, improve transparency, accountability to minimize those leakages, those abuses. Kasi the government has to spend. And again, and to go back to the main point, right now, the economy is slowing. It was slowing even before the pandemic. It got worse because of the lockdowns. And now we have this awful situation of accumulating global crises. So in that context, isn't it odd that it's business as usual for the government? The exact same policies they were proposing before, increasing consumption taxes, fiscal austerity, controlling the budget. It's kind of weird that in really unusual circumstances, why are we having the same business as usual measures? So what should be done? If the economy is on a structural downtrend, has been even before the pandemic, if the structural downtrend is getting worse because of the really awful global conditions, we should rethink what the government can do. And what the government can do, it can implement more proactive, more counter-cyclical fiscal policy. Of course, it's not going to be
like
easy.
what, Sonny? Like what? Because I don't want to, eat up our time again explaining the details.
Sorry. They can spend more. The problem right now, people don't have enough money to spend. In a 70% consumption-driven economy, if people don't have enough money to spend, saying the economy is reopening and then, gumastos na kayo. It's like opening a mall, pero puro mahirap yung nasa labas. So that's the bottom line. People have to have money to spend. So what can be done? Put money in people's pockets, especially it's the government's fault. They've lost money in the last 2.5 years. So put money in people's pockets. That's a huge demand-side intervention that's going to sort of jumpstart the economy.
So you're talking ayuda?
Ayuda. That might be inflationary. Kailangan may supply side intervention. Improve, okay naman, good step forward, spend more on agriculture, but also help MSMEs because that's parang, di ba, the president likes to talk about value chains. Spend more on the supply side as well. And then that will get the economy going. But the thing is, if the government thinks na, hindi, we can't spend, but they're spending actually on infrastructure, they're spending on port barrel, on confidential intelligence funds, even with, just a 5.3 trillion budget, at least naman, spend it better para may mas better multiplier effects. That's level 1. Level 2, we actually need a bigger budget. How do you finance that? There's so much wealth in the country. Di ba, this thinking na, no, we can't touch the wealth of the rich because they're politically connected. The problem is, that's setting aside a major source of resources for national development. But instead, we're going to tax the poor with plastic bags and expanded VAT and Shopee and Lazada. Wala, pigang-piga na nga sila, you try to get more money from them pa. So sa amin, it has to be looked at as a package. We need a long view. It's very short-termist to think that, hindi, balanced budget, fiscal consolidation. Because you have to remember, no matter what you look at in terms of budget being balanced, fiscal consolidation, small deficit, that only says something about the budget and the deficit. It doesn't say anything about future growth prospects, much less does it say anything about what are the conditions of the people. And if we don't reframe our thinking, if our economic managers, the finance people, so fixated on magtipid tayo, magbalance tayo, without realizing, para saan pa yung balance? Dapat para sa ordinaryong Pilipino, that's going to be a problem. It will be a problem.
But ang nervyos or the fear of many is a repeat of the Marcos disaster, Marcos Sr. disaster, where government kept spending and spending or borrowing and borrowing money and borrowed us to the grave. We barely got out of that hole that the first Marcos created. And now you're suggesting that we make the budget bigger, but in order to make a budget bigger, we have to borrow more. In fact, yesterday they announced the first utang of the PBBM administration was $2 billion. Ba yun? Tama ba yun?
Yeah, 2 billion. That's why sa amin, economics isn't just about economics. The politics matters so much. This is a very political budget, diba? It's not actually economically rational from a development perspective, but it's politically rational. That's why nga, diba, they're deferring to the budgets of the mga the president, vice president, etc. So sa amin, what do you do against that? Sa amin, the lesser of two evils is to the lesser of two evils is to spend more, but yung pangarap natin, we need better governance. Kasi if we use the idea that our government is so bad so we can't spend, taking the long view, that's tying our hands not just in this budget, but in all budgets to come. And if we tie our hands fiscally for all the decades to come, as we've done in the past decades, it won't be a surprise why things are changing. Kasi nga, kumbaga, na-rationalize pa yung inaction. So sa amin, it is understanding that we don't want a return to the Marcos excesses, but kahit pa paano, there are improvements since the Marcos dictatorship. We do have stronger civil society. We do have stronger institutional mechanisms, whether it's a free press or even technically the way our democratic checks and balance function. We should support that. So para sa amin, I mean, IBON counts itself all these decades part of the social movements in the country. Para sa amin, it's politically rational to attack critics, but it's socially irrational kasi critics are the institutional check to abuse of power. So sa amin, we layer the problem. Yes, there is some kind of better plan for the economy, but we're also very, very keenly aware for that nice idea to be implemented, there has to be political muscle behind it, and there has to be better institutions. So even naman, we don't just take up econ issues. We do take up political issues. Hindi rin dahil sexy, but that's the foundation of actually changing their economic policies.
Okay, let's go for a quick break, Sonny. And when we come back, I'd like to put the car on reverse a little and just give our viewers a little background on IBON and on about you as well, because most people, when they listen to you, Inglesero ka economics ka, economist ka, di ba? Pero bakit IBON? Yung IBON, people keep thinking IBON mang nakakulong or whatever, di ba? Medyo leftist, down to the earth. So there's a disconnect. Let's explain to our viewers why IBON and who Sonny is. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and with us today is Sonny Africa of the IBON Foundation. Now, the question is, which came first, the IBON or the Sonny?
The Sonny, unfortunately. Kung feeling matanda kayo, Sir Cito, matanda na rin. Actually, ako. The Sonny came first. I'm
okay, so the Sonny Africa came first. Now, there are not many Africas in the Philippines, no pun intended, okay? But the only Africa that comes to mind is someone who was with the BIR and someone I went to school with in my elementary. But where do the Africas come from? Batangas?
Yes po, sakto. There are some breakaway groups of the Africas, but historically, we're from Lipain, Batangas. And very proud to say, yung landlord ancestors namin actually supported the Katipunan. We do have our hands on a little document saying that a certain African landlord was giving rice supplies to the Katipunan when they were passing through Batangas. So yes, the Africas are from Batangas. So we're related to si Tomas Africa and the sobrang talented Susan Africa. Wala akong talent pero meron somewhere sa Africa clan na punta po kay Susan Africa.
Kung nalagyan ka pa ng talent, medyo unfair na yun, ano? Kasi may utak ka na, may talent ka pa. Parang, hello, ano ba naman yan? Palakasan. But anyway, Sonny, you graduated from the London School of Economics. You have a degree in philosophy and economics and also in public administration, I believe. Now, how did that happen? Kasi here you are, you're concerned, or at least people kind of box you in the ang ibon na yan, mga makakaliwayan, mga critic yan ng government, etc. But you are one of the, if not the only one I know, one of the very few who addresses social and political economic concerns of the country, but you have a pedigree from a prestigious university. How did that come about?
Well, prestigious din naman ng UP and Ateneo at marami
of course, yeah.
From UP and Ateneo.
Hindi, kasi kung graduate ka ng UP, parang sasabihin, nagtaka ka pa na naging rebel din, UP. Diba? But, London School of Economics, there are not many socially aware individuals, outspoken individuals or groups in the country that can bring out a certificate from the London School of Economics.
Well, actually, Sir Cito, I think precisely because nakapag-London ako, that actually is what pushed me. I don't think if I stayed in the country, I don't think I'd actually go into activism. The most glaring thing for me, among many contrasts, was actually juxtaposing masarap buhay ko in university. So actually, I had a nice time studying, but also doing the typical university stuff. Tapos na-juxtapose ka yan, it got to the point, there was an OFW in the family, in the apartment where I was staying. She was in the upper floor. And then in the middle of the night, kumatok siya, asking with her maleta, asking kung pwede ba itago yung maleta kasi she was running away from her amo who hadn't been paying her for like 3 to 4 months. So she had to maneuver to get her passport, then pretend she was going to the market, but she wanted to leave na. So actually that, I'm sure accumulating to, exposed naman ako dun sa domestics in London. Pero that was actually a turning point kasi I realized that was so crazy. Here I was in London, literally enjoying myself, like some president siguro, but to have that contrast in my personal life and someone else was asking for help, that actually, really was an epiphany. So since then, I'd actually tried to spend whatever I might have learned sa LSE to help more people rather than just myself. My struggle sa family, syempre the parents wanted the usual corporate track. They thought that I could parlay the diploma into something more profitable.
You could have gone into banking, finance, NEDA, etc.
And nag-NEDA ako, Sir Cito. Actually, my first job was in NEDA.
Okay.
Precisely because I felt nga na I had to give something back. Of course, your default mode is the government because they're the biggest institution in the country. They have so much resources, so much authority. My go-to job, the go-to for development is the government. So when I graduated from my undergraduate program, my first job was in NEDA. I worked there for almost a year. I was in the World Bank ADB desk. So it was actually very useful for me to get a sense of how national government policy works.
Okay.
And my friends, actually, my colleagues there, many of them have stayed in NEDA. They're actually in quite high-ranking positions right now.
Okay, now a little about the London School of Economics, because people, well, at least in the last 10 years, have been using their certificates of attendance in programs, short courses in Harvard, etc., like deodorant to their questionable academic achievements, diba? Now, when you say London School of Economics, people would tend, para mga pang multinational yan yung mga imperialista, etc. What is the how would I call it? The kind of mindset instilled in students in the London School of Economics, and what kind of a life do you have there? Is your nose stuck to the pages of the books?
Yeah, I studied so hard, Sir Cito.
Yeah, sure.
You're not gonna catch me saying anything else. LSE actually was set up by Fabian socialists. So they've always prided themselves on being some kind of leftist radicals in the mainstream. But actually, when I went to LSE, again, revealing my age, that was in the late 1980s. So this is a time of global political tumult, diba? Nag-roll back na yung Eastern Bloc, USSR was collapsing, China was reverting to the capital road, etc. So actually, even the time nasa LSE ako, it wasn't radical. And I remember two of my most popular professors, popular not sa amin, but popular in the field, they actually advised the Soviet government on their free market reforms. So at that time, the economics training of the LSE was by no means radical. It was actually very free market. They were riding that cusp of neoliberalism pushed by the political impulse na wala na alternative to capitalism. I think the reason hindi ako na-suck in sa ganong klaseng thinking was because I wanted a double degree. Kaya nag-philosophy ako. I wanted the philosophy for fun kasi masarap maging pilosopo, di ba? Kung inuman, medyo masarap pilosopo ka. But I think it gave me a way to put my economics background into context. And I think na-validate siya. I mean...
Yeah, but philosophy, and to put a drop of seriousness into that field or that course, I mean, we always say here in the Filipino, para maging pilosopo, but in actuality, it is a serious study of how men and women should think, how human beings should think. And so what in that course made you realize, teka, it cannot be all about economics. It must also be about humanity.
Actually, it's 2 points here. First, because I was taking philosophy, then you're taking the progression in philosophical thought. It wasn't meant to be evolutionary. I think that was the good thing about taking up philosophers. There's no assumption that the newest philosophers are the smartest ones because they built on stuff in the past. Kumbaga, when the landscape of thinkers, those are all equally relevant. You can actually choose how to frame how you view the world. That was important kasi, in terms of timing, late 80s, accelerating neoliberalism, there's no alternative to capitalism, Reagan and Thatcher, diba, all the free market economics, there was this overwhelming hegemony of one school of thought in economic thinking. And because I was taking philosophy, I realized it's kind of overstating it kasi there's so many schools of thought. You can have Marxist, institutionalist, behavioral, Keynesian, etc. So in my whole economics training in LSE, we were being taught just one school of thinking. If I didn't take philosophy, I would have thought that's the only way to look at the economy. So, which is the second point. Actually, tama kayo eh. Yung in-ingrained dun sa free market economics is they're confusing means with ends, di ba? Free market, shrinking government, di ba? Thatcherism, Reaganism.
Formula.
all that thinking about what's the best way to run the economy, it was so easy to realize, teka, saan yung mga tao doon? Tapos looking at the Philippines, it was during the Cory Aquino time, you could see na, teka, may problem with the way economics is being taught. It's too hegemonic, parang as if holy grail na yung free market economics. Then I was looking at the Philippines, teka, this is exactly what's happening in the Philippines. So when I came back to work, kaya ako nagneda, syempre development. I mean, that was something that I really felt I had to contribute to. And I realized the exact failings of that ideology that was actually, we were talking about then on the side na, hindi formally sa school, were actually taking place in the Philippines. And
in essence, Sonny, if I may, in essence, the Western concept was being enforced and implemented in a Asian third world Philippine reality.
Oh, as in walang context, diba? Parang as if tabula rasa, without realizing the same oligarchs are there, or if not the same name oligarchs, the same concentration of capital and power, and the same flawed political institutions, the bad governance. So parang on that template, kung mag-free market ka, it didn't actually make people free. It made us actually more dependent on the whims of who's in power. So that notion of the economy para kanino, unfortunately, the economy for the powerful. And because that system of power wasn't changed, superficial lang yung from dictatorship to democratic transition and then restoration of elite democracy. Actually, it was so early on, nagsink in sa akin, there is a power struggle that should be taking place, and we won't be able to fix the economy, which means shaking up the status quo if you don't actually shake up the political status quo.
Yeah, now here's the excuse me. Here's the realization. Because you were saying earlier, unless we change how we view things and approach things, nothing will be resolved. Now, you were talking about ayudas, etc. What's the solution? Because I share your view. In agriculture, I discovered that unless you have 50 inahens or 50 sows, you're not commercially competitive or considered commercial. And that's times 20 each, or times 25 now, or 30,000. That's a 1.5 million peso capital that you need to have a backyard piggery. Same with so unless you have capital, you'll never get anywhere, and you can't compete with the big guys because they have all the money to burn. And the worst thing here in the Philippines is the big businesses have copied the Western and Japanese models and have penetrated even our sari-sari store. Kumbaga, yung big boys, nakikipagkompetensya pa para doon sa mga kanto boys. And I'm saying, we're doomed. What's your take?
Actually, sakto yun eh. That's exactly our point. We cannot let go of the importance of government. Kasi in the so-called free market, those have power, those who can suck in the capital, those who can dominate markets, will always suck in the capital and dominate markets. So kumbaga, we're long beyond. Siguro baka nung 18th century or 17th century, you could have spoken about some kind of free market economy na competing sizes of firms. Pero like I said nga, since the late 19th century, marami ng big boys. And as long as the big boys are there, they're part of the landscape. We can't wish away their bigness. And they're going to resist being smaller because they have control over the political system. So what's the solution there? Sa amin, step one talaga. Who can intervene in favor of the small guys? The government talaga eh. How do you make the government intervene for the small guys instead of the big boys? Have more democratic government. How can you make sure na the power you give to government to be more democratic and intervene isn't used for the big boys but for the small boys? Make it more better governance, more transparent, more accountable. So parang the problem is so big. We want small solutions. Sana it's small solutions, steps towards the big one. Hindi yung we have a little, a pocket utopia and then think na things will sort themselves out in the rest of society.
But Sonny, here's the problem. You mentioned Reagan earlier, okay? We have a government, not an administration, okay? Well, let's use the generic concept of government. Government in the Philippines operates like a business. any small businessman or any big businessman for that matter, in the process of setting up businesses, hindi ka pa nakakabenta, kumita na yung gobyerno local and national. Pagbenta mo o mag-import ka ng material, the government already earns money off your back, and you haven't even brought in a single centavo for your company. I remember, I think it was Bob Dole and Reagan who both said, government has to get out of business. Government has to focus on its primary functions of food, education, and shelter. What's your take on that?
Unfortunately, the government has to be in business. I mean, even the mga countries na nakatingala tayo, South Korea, Taiwan, you can argue China, but actually even Western countries like the United States, UK, France, Germany, across the board, they all develop without fail, not with a small government. They all develop with a proper government with a sort of a longer view about the situation. Tapos tama kayo. Businesses actually, by nature, may short-term view siya because they have to make a profit right now. It's only the government that can take the long view and support businesses maybe through a loss-making 3 to 5 years while they develop themselves to be more competitive. So, ang naging difficult natin sa Philippines, because of the Marcos dictatorship and the huge abuses nga since, and then the same kind of regulatory capture since the Marcos time until the present, diba? Sa energy sector lang, it doesn't make sense that the biggest power generator is regulating itself. Di ba? Parang senseless yun. But pero para sa amin, does that mean government should shrink back? No, because the government will never shrink back. If we are in a mode of thinking that, hindi, let's shrink the government, can I name names? Okay na ba, Sir Cito?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I mean, no, well, anyway, look, let me just... I don't want to diverge, okay? Give me...
Government's needed to. Yung point ko lang, the government has to intervene to make small businesses prosper, to develop the national economy. If we think that a smaller government will be better, the smaller government philosophy will just actually make the big boys even more powerful. Yun actually the irony there.
Because what the government can't deliver, the big boys will convert into a business.
That's part of it, but also the big boys will not stop trying to claim government. Diba, alam mo yun?
Okay.
Business will never let go of government because that's how they stay big.
Yeah, so, but let
the rest of the people are told, hindi election ng government. Matatawa yung big business kasi they'll know, all the more, may influence ko yung government because all the other players have pulled back from trying to influence government. So sa amin, the laban is not as small government as possible. Yung laban is the government should serve the majority, not the few. And that's a political struggle, not an economic struggle.
Okay, wait a minute. Before I forget or we lose track. Okay, IBON. What is IBON all about? Is IBON Sunny Africa? Is IBON a association of NGOs, etc.? Ano ba yung IBON? Or does it just signify a philosophy?
IBON is right now, we're an NGO. We're a non-stock, non-profit organization. We do research and we try to popularize it through media, through our researches, and through actually, quite important to us, actual direct education work among the basic sector organizations. Kaya kami sinasabing kaluwete is because one, ideas namin, they're a bit not mainstream. Secondly, we work closely with Philippine social movements, farmers groups, workers groups, and all of that. Plus, may schools program kami. Pero IBON, I think, timing nga eh. We were set up in 1978 by a nun and 2 researchers during the Marcos dictatorship. And nung time nila, yung philosophy, hindi namin nabago. Sabi nila, yung economics, it's too important to be left to technocrats. Diba? Yan ang reputation ni Marcos, diba? He had such great technocrats, ang galing ng economy. But what kind of economy? It was run to the ground. So in 1978, the IBON's founders realized, teka, yung economics, dapat para sa nakararami yan. So they set up IBON to start explaining, popularize economic issues in a much more systematic manner. And, we've survived 44 years, of course, with the help of mga, generous donors. But ultimately, we've survived the past 44 years despite the attacks sa amin. Kasi we think we are providing a service in being able to sort of make sense and getting people feel more empowered instead of disempowered by, wala kayong magagawa sa free market, globalization, you can't do anything. Medyo, it's so defeatist. Kami,
But
activist kami.
how big
No
of
way.
an organization are you, Sonny? I mean, are you free to share like how many persons strong is your group?
Yes po. Well, from that 3 founders, we're now 27 staff. And para sa amin, it's 27 staff na we have no illusion that we can change the world. But we think we're 27 staff working with so many social movements, trade unionists, farmers organizations, urban poor groups. That's our way to actually amplify yung work namin. So we're 27
But
staff.
what about collaboration with the right or with the center guys?
Well, a big part of our work actually is also lobbying work. That's why we show up in congressional hearings, we submit position papers. No whole time na may mga free trade agreements, WTO, to AFTA, to the RCEP, IBON engages actually. I mean, it's not so visible, it's not so sexy, but we actually do have, it kind of collapsed during the third administration. We had actually very good relations with former officials ng DTI, DOF, NEDA, the economic team. Nag-collapse lang siya nung sinabi ni Duterte, Communist Front kami, wag niyo ko usapin yan. And by executive fiat, our previous contacts in the government basically have started distancing. Siguro sinabihan kasi sila na wag niyo ko usapin yung IBON kasi mga komunista, terrorista yung mga yan.
Okay, now that put you on the lurch or put you in a spot that you were essentially partly neutralized in your influence of government. What have you done what are you going to do to correct that? Because I respect your organization. I respect you as a leader. And I will be the first to say that the information you share will help people do better assessment, evaluation, or decision. But it's all useless if no one will even speak to you. What are you going to do about that?
Well, una-una, I have to say, we don't claim to have perfect knowledge. What we do claim to have is an attempt to look at things from a different and more people-based perspective. So we're very willing to be corrected kung may mali kaming sinasabi. But what are we doing? Well, ultimately, our foundation is our research. So whatever we say, we make sure there's evidence to back it up. So that's our foundation of any relationships we have with government, with civil society, or with media, or anyone else who might hear from the academe. But right now, we haven't given up. We are still applying to be part of, for instance, subcommittees on the SDGs in NEDA. Of course, na-deny kami despite all our endorsement. Pero we have not shut doors. We do remain open. We still reach out. We submit position papers. We attend congressional hearings. We still do lobbying work. Hindi naman absolute. That's one thing actually I think I have to stress then. We know the security forces went around the government agencies telling them not to talk to IBON. But because may relationships kami na build up, hindi naman lahat yun ay nag-burn ng bridges. At the visible level, medyo naputol nga siya. But actually, we still do have quite good relationships with the real foot soldiers of the government, yung mga right-thinking bureaucrats. So we haven't burned...
Yeah, you can't argue against success. So in terms of trophies, in terms of accomplishments, what is IBON and Sunny Africa proud of having achieved? Programs, laws, etc.
Actually, sa amin, the most important thing is 1978, IBON was started when no one else was talking about economics. We are 100% sure that we made a big contribution to make people think about economics as something they can intervene in. So it's not a single event, but it's an accumulation from thousands of researches, hundreds of thousands of pages, literally millions of people reached by our textbooks, our researches, our actual yung education work na amin. Tingnan namin that was a foundation for people to think about economics, one, as a popular issue, and secondly, from the perspective of yung marginalized. So
but
amin,
is economics, Sunny, is economics or using economics, the discussion of economics, a poison pill in itself? Because you were saying that the system, the mindset in the country is, twisted in relation to the reality of poverty and challenges. So once you start talking economics and presenting it in an economic setup, are you inevitably going to end up bumping heads or irritating people in power?
We don't mean to irritate people in power. We actually do want to convince people in power then. And we have spoken to enough people in power, enough, even some of the mga big boys who actually sympathize with our views. So sa amin, those are steps forward kasi we don't convince them by raising our voice, although minsan na-agitate talaga ako. We convince them on the basis of, ito yung analysis. Para kung mali kami, correct us. If you agree, hindi ba yung tamang conclusion, more people-oriented economics. So, it is true, I think, that we are irritating people. But one point I do want to stress, we did not irritate the Duterte administration because of our analysis. We irritate the Duterte administration because our analysis is being embraced by a lot of people among organized groups, workers, farmers, and it's helping them use that to criticize government policies. So para sa amin, we're only like 27 staff nga, hindi namin papalakin ulo namin. We're only relevant insofar as we can work with other people's organizations, and then they embrace that, they enrich our own thinking on that, and they take up actually those same issues.
But aren't you worried that you're just singing to the choir, and shouldn't you do a lot more to make the other side see that this is about the country and not about you or left or right?
We don't want to diminish the value of singing to the choir because right now, there's a lot of misinformation about the economy. There's a lot of misinformation about economic policies. So to sing to the choir is not just convincing people already convinced, it's ensuring that there is a critical mass of people who understand that the misinformation is wrong and there's a certain way of doing things. So para sa amin, we do talk to social movements to sustain their critical thinking about the economy. Pero nga, apart from that, we do also want to stress, we do reach out to government. We've applied to join as a civil society member of the subcommittee in SDGs. We engage even the United Nations. We do lobby work on economic and social cultural rights. We attend congressional and Senate hearings. We submit position papers on issues. We do dialogues, whether it's on water privatization or in tax reforms. We do all that. So we never pull back on that. If people are going to be responsive in power, we welcome that. But we also know for a fact the people in power won't be responsive if there's not enough ferment on the ground. Ganun kasimple lang yun, di ba? If you're cozy with the way things are, you won't rethink things. So we realize it has to be a two-track up. Parang bibingka. We do want the heat from the top in terms of talking to those in power. But we also realize kung wala yung heat mula sa baba, hilaw yung bibingka. They would actually get cooked properly. And our big focus talaga doon is, like you said, it's preaching to the choir, but we'd argue it's strengthening views on the ground more than just sort of wasting our time talking to people who already know how things should be.
Well, Sonny, as always, it's a very productive conversation. Got to know even more about Sonny Africa, about economics and politics, and about IBON. And I'm sure this won't be the last. And hopefully we will see in our lifetime little better cooperation among everyone. Thank you very much, Sonny.
Thank you, Sir Cito. Happy weekend. Thank you very much.
You too. Okay, that's Sonny Africa, and I hope that our viewers enjoyed that, because in this country, we need to elevate the level of information, of intelligence, of understanding, and that's what today's interview hopes to accomplish. Okay, let's now go to the end blessing for the week from the song of J.J. Heller. And it goes, hand to hold. May you never lose the wonder in your soul. May you always have a blanket for the cold. May the living light inside you be the compass as you go. May you always know you have my hand to hold. And if any one of you out there is going through a rough time, remember, you have God's hand to hold. Say a prayer, and we are here for you, wishing you all the best. Thank you for joining us this week. God bless you. Please keep it here on One News.